All right, thank you so much everyone for joining the EV Charging Station Home Installation webinar. This webinar is part of National Drive Electric Week, which is an annual electric vehicle campaign to spread awareness of electric vehicles in all communities across the United States. National Drive Electric Week is sponsored exclusively, the exclusive automotive sponsor is Nissan Leaf, and it's presented nationally by Plug in America, Electric Auto Association, and Sierra Club. And this event is being presented locally by Plug in America. All right, so here's an overview of today's presenters. So I'm Kylie Morgan, and I'm with Plug in America. I manage National Drive Electric Week and our other April campaign, Drive Electric Earth Day. And we also have Ken Sapp, who's the general manager at QMerit. We're also going to hear from electrician Brett Beard with Beard Electric EV. And then finally, we're going to hear from Will Barrett with ClipperCreek. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. All right, so before we get started, I'm just going to do a brief sponsor thank you. A huge thank you to our platinum sponsor, Nissan Leaf. They've been a sponsor of Drive Electric Week since 2012. And have been a great support to us. Also, a huge thank you to silver sponsor Electrify America and the Normal Now campaign. All right, and then before we get into the presentation, I'm going to share a brief video from our sponsor, Nissan Leaf.
To rack up 5 billion miles, you've got to be dependable. The all-electric 2020 Nissan Leaf. J.D. Power's most dependable compact car.
All right, so now let's get to it. So after my brief presentation, we're going to hear from Brett Beard. But first, I'm going to cover a few electric vehicle basics. So an electric vehicle is any vehicle that can drive on electricity from a wall plug or charging station. And there are two types of electric vehicles. The first is an all-electric vehicle, which only uses electricity from a wall plug or charging station. It cannot be fueled with gasoline. Next is the plug-in hybrid. So plug-in hybrids can use electricity from a wall plug or charging station and can also be fueled with gasoline. These generally have smaller batteries, slower charging speeds, and can't use a fast charger, but they have a great total range by using both electricity and gasoline. And an important note is this is different from your traditional hybrid. Plug-in hybrids would have a plug specifically for electricity. All right, next there are three types of charging options. And just to note that, most EV drivers actually do most of their charging at home overnight, kind of like a cell phone, but there are lots of public charging stations as well. So when you're charging at home, you could use a level 1 charging station. This is a standard wall plug that, plugs into the same outlet as a hair dryer, for example, as long as it's grounded. But if you drive a lot, you can also get a level 2 charging station, which can be installed by a licensed electrician. And you can visit plugstar.com to find an electrician. All right, and at work, if your workplace doesn't have a charging station, you can definitely ask them to consider it. There are a lot of rebates and purchase incentives for workplaces to install charging stations. And then finally, there are thousands of public charging stations out there. Both level 2 and fast charge stations. So you can visit plugstar.com or a navigation map to find some near you. Okay, and as I said before, there are different types of charging, level 1 and level 2. So level 1 is that standard wall plug, and it charges about 40 miles overnight. So these are great for plug-in hybrids that don't have much electric range. Then we also have the level 2 charging station. This will plug into a 240 volt outlet, the same as your washer or dryer, and it'll give you about 25 miles per hour of charging. Fast charge stations are generally public chargers, and they can charge from 0% to 80% in 20 to 40 minutes. All right, and next I'm going to welcome Ken Sapp from QMerit Charging. All right, Ken, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. This is Ken with QMerit, and thank you, Kylie. What we'll do here is briefly illustrate some of the benefits and the lifestyle and the tips on getting a level 2 charging station at home. So as Kylie said, level 1 is sort of a trickle charge. I guess you could almost call it that. Your level 1 charger comes with every vehicle, and a level 1 charger just plugs into any traditional plug. Typically, you wouldn't have an electrician for this. You could usually use the plugs that you have, although some are loaded up a little bit. But basically, this is the one that comes with the car. It charges at a slower speed that's good for plug-in hybrids or for those that have a predictable low mileage lifestyle. So the US government once said that 30 miles is a typical commute for most people, although some drive much, much more than that. But if you find some range that you typically drive, you can sort of do the math and see if level 1 will work for you, or if you're rent an apartment and you need to depend on public stations, things like that, you might depend on level 1 for a while. But level 2 will take us to a whole new level. So next slide, please. Okay, level 2 charging just elevates your experience of owning an electric vehicle. You'll see that there's a wall charger typically installed, and it's usually in your garage or your driveway. It becomes very convenient. You come home maybe after work, you plug it in. A lot of times there's intelligence behind them. There's different varieties. We'll talk about that after this. But that's sort of the lifestyle when you have level 2 charging at your house. Next slide. So meet your new gas station. You'll be able to avoid lines in the future. You'll basically want to equip your garage with this level 2 charging station. Again, you could use level 1 as a trickle charge if that's what you're going to depend on. But when you go to level 2, the plug for your vehicle, as you see on the right, is the same. So the interface into your vehicle is the same, whether it's level 1 or level 2. And then somewhere in your garage, you'll want to have an electrician come in and basically wire up an outlet or wire up the station to give you a much faster charge and a much better experience. Next slide. And the lifestyle becomes different. So imagine as your car is parked, if you think about how many hours in any given day that our vehicles are parked, we could take advantage of that. So while your car is, let's say, in the garage or sleeping overnight, you could be reading to the kids, preparing for your next day, working late, sleeping, whatever it is. Your car is getting fully charged in this environment, and you wake up ready to go the next day. So think about the lifestyle adjustment. It's quite convenient. And Kylie, the next slide, please. It's charging. So in today's world, if you're driving a internal combustion engine, you tend to think that, oh, I've got a half a tank left, I'm getting down to a quarter tank or whatever. You need to make an event and go down to the gas station and top it off. This completely changes everything. When you have a level 2 home charging station, you wake up every morning completely full in most cases. So you wake up, and rather than having to go from the bottom up to go get a full tank, you basically start off fully charged. And the indicators are kind of fun to watch the car as it turns green, and it makes its way up to 250 miles range, at least for my car. So you wake up fresh, and now you just say, well, if I'm going to drive 40 or 60 miles today, when you come back and charge it back up, it's going to top it off. So the next morning you start off fully charged. It's just a kind of a reversal of the lifestyle we tend to be used to from driving gas cars. Next slide. And you can avoid these long lines of gas stations. I've made the switch, and I used to have to do sort of a Saturday and then once in the middle of the week, and it's really nice to not have to do that anymore. So basically going all electric, especially with level 2 at home, you don't have to build this into your weeks or your schedules anymore. Okay, next. So what does it take to get a level 2 charging station at your house? When I showed you the picture about your garage, welcome to your new gas station. Here's some of the criteria. Brett will talk in more detail from here as an electrician, but basically you need to make sure that what we'll find out in the process is make sure that your home has enough electrical capacity. Because when you bring that charging to your home for an electric vehicle, it's a pretty good sized load. So you need to have a certified licensed electrician to do the work. They'll run a new circuit breaker. You'll need a level 2 charging station. Again, that'll be talked about here. There are different choices, but you can pick the one that works best for you, and you'll want to get a city permit. This is really important because, again, because of the load it's putting on your house, you want to have it done safely. The local inspector will validate everything was done to code. You'll sleep well knowing that everything's done, safely installed, and you're in great shape, and you don't want to skip that step. Sometimes there's a tendency for some people to try to save the cost and not to necessarily get a permit, but we really strongly advise not to do that. You want to get a permit. Okay, next slide, please. Here's another way of looking at it. We talked about electrical panel. When you move into all EV and you get your home equipped, for a short time, you'll need to think about things you probably didn't think about before. For example, your electrical panel. Most of us only go out there if the panel flips, if the breakers breaks or something, or the breaker trips or something. We have to go reset the main. But basically, an electrician will make sure that you have enough capacity to put a new circuit, and they're going to run a new circuit. So all those tools in the front on that driveway, these electricians are licensed, properly trained, they know the code. It's more to it than just having a smart person come in and run wire. There's a lot behind it. So you really want to put your trust into someone who is properly licensed and insured. Don't take any shortcuts there. And what they're going to do, they're going to run a circuit. Some of you might be familiar with conduit. That's that tubing that shows in that third picture there. There's that outlet. That's a 240-volt outlet. There's different options the way you set your charging station up. If you go with an outlet model like we do here, you can just plug the station in. The electrician will complete the installation of the new circuit and then hang the station and plug it into that. On the right, you'll see the configuration of the plug. So clearly this is not your home 110 or 120. You'll notice the difference in that 240 volt. That's what that plug looks like. It enables the station to charge much, much faster. There's just a lot more electricity coming through it at a much faster speed. So basically the run's going to be from your electrical panel. Electrician's going to need to run power basically over to the place you're going to put your station. So in that garage view there on the front left part of the garage, they're preparing to put that socket, and that socket's going to allow the station to be mounted right there. So it's very convenient for plugging in. But you'll have some conduit to consider. You'll have to make a physical run between the panel and that. And then once you're all set up, it's a great lifestyle after that. So next slide, please. What are the cost factors? We get asked this a lot, and people don't really know where to start or what to expect. In the picture before, you saw the home that had an electrical panel just outside the garage, and it was close, and it wasn't too complicated. There was enough space in the panel. That was a good installation. It's fairly easy. This one here is a little more complicated. So if you just think about, if you look kind of the bottom part of that picture, you see the electrical panel at the home. Imagine the run for that conduit. And so where in the previous one, the panel was very close to where the station would be mounted. In this one, you'll see that you still need to run a physical conduit from that panel up and around. You can make the assumption that the garage opening is over by the driveway in the background and then to go around it. So we ask, give electricians kind of some slack. Give them some credit because they've got to sometimes get creative and run that. They might need to run the conduit down, along the bottom. In some homes where there's a detached garage, you might have to do some trenching, hopefully not. Sometimes they run through an attic or a crawl space to get the power from the panel out over to where the station is going to be installed. Again, you really only have to think about this for that short time when you're working with one of the electricians to get it installed. Once it's installed, you're done, and you probably never think about that again. But these are the factors that have to be considered when you're going to get a level 2 station installed. So just to kind of summarize in those bullets, hopefully your electrical system has enough capacity to add. That's a really good step when that happens. That way you don't have to do a panel upgrade and things like that. The topography is sort of the word I use, getting that electrical power from the panel out to your station. Permit, there's going to be fees for that. We talked about that already. Do not skip it, very important. And then we use $750 to $1,750 for a basic installation, and it really varies based on those items we just talked about. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what you'll be looking for, what to be expected, and we'll turn it over to Brett next for Electrician's Viewpoint.
All right, thank you so much, Ken. Yeah, so welcoming Brett Beard from Beard Electric EV. You know, he's our resident electrician today, and he's going to walk us through this topic.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good to go.
All right. Thank you very much. It's Brett with Beard Electric EV. We're an electric vehicle infrastructure installation company. Our division does nothing but electric vehicles. If you could show the next slide. So that's a picture of us, me in front of what is called a LADWP, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, separate meter EV charging system. That is a separate meter that is just for charging an electric vehicle. It is something that we do with most utility companies, is we partner with them to install separate metering equipment just for the electric vehicle, because it gives the EV owner a separate bill so they know exactly what their fuel costs are for charging their vehicle. Little bit about us. We got our exposure doing this. We've been in business since 1984. We were doing originally wastewater treatment, freshwater treatment, stormwater controls for cities and municipalities. In 2011, we got a chance to partner with Chevy Volt and work with their fantastic team, as well as the Bosch EV Solutions team. And we installed quite a bit of EV infrastructure in the early years, getting a chance to learn what customers' habits were on how they use their charging systems, learned very importantly what the process was from the utility standpoint for installing one of these charging stations, as well as the permitting aspects of what it takes to install a charging system from your city. Next slide, please. So these are just a couple pictures of what we had early in the beginning. It's just a couple charging stations along with a separate meter system. That is what we do mostly, is install second meter systems. All right, next slide, please. We are also doing fleet electrification as well. We've taken what we've learned over the years from our, I think we're up to over 2,000 plus customers now, residentially, and now we are doing fleet electrification, taking all of those best practices that we started back in 2011 and now helping city municipalities. Next slide. This is just some more information or more pictures of those fleet installations, DC fast chargers included. Okay, next slide. Some more of that fleet electrification. Next slide, please. Okay, and then this is, I can really go into this. So when you're pulling permits, that's something that's very important for installing an electrical vehicle station, because it allows the city, which is your local city or your local municipality, wherever you live, allows them a chance to review the electrical contractor's work. And in order to pull a permit, typically in this state, and it's probably very much the same throughout the nation, is that contractor has to be licensed, bonded, and insured in order to pull that permit. And also at that time, we need to forward to them our drawings and tell the city a little bit about what we are putting in your home as far as the station goes. So the city really gets a chance to protect the owner. And that's why we are so demanding on having permits. We insist on them. We won't do an installation without a permit. And this slide shows in here in California how we have 88 different cities in the Los Angeles area. And so if you're in the Los Angeles area, we have 88 different authorities where we have to go pull that permit. And that's why a lot of contractors may not pull the permit, because it is a little difficult to have to go to different cities and explain the permitting or explain the installation, pull the permit. For us, it can add about maybe sometimes $600 just for us to do the permitting process, and that's excluding the permit and inspection fees as well. So that's just the time and labor it takes for us to pull permits. Next slide. Okay, this is a little bit more about what it takes for us to pull a permit. We need to have our state contractor's license, city business license, proof of workman's comp insurance. We need to have site plans, engineered drawings, single line drawings, load calculations, specifications of the charging equipment. And this is one of the most important parts, is it's an electrical contractor, when they're installing a charging station, the charging station needs to be third-party safety listed or UL listed, and that is called a UL or a ETL listing. ClipperCreek, that will be speaking here shortly, their stations have this certification, and that's why we are very comfortable and happy to install their charging equipment. Bosch EV Solutions, the Bosch charging stations, also have this certification. It makes it's we cannot install a station unless this listing is on the equipment. So a lot of times we'll have customers that will bring us equipment that they purchased maybe through Amazon, whatever it might be, and they're not aware that that listing needs to be there for us to obtain a permit. Otherwise, we can't do that installation. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit about the construction process, and this is more for a large scale job. But for a smaller job, the permitting is going to take a contractor going in, pulling the permits, and then they're going to have an inspection from the city after the installation is done. And COVID has really helped out our permitting process, because a lot of cities and municipalities now are doing Zoom inspections, virtual inspections. This is a win for us and for the industry, because we now can be very flexible with the inspector's schedule and be able to get the inspector on site safely, into a customer's home safely. And we are able to show them through video documentation exactly what they're looking for. We can show them the circuit breaker, wire size, anything that the inspector wants to see, we can do virtually. And time-wise, it's much easier for an inspector to schedule a Zoom inspection than it is to give us a window of when they're able to just drop by the site during their busy days. So we are a big fan of Zoom inspections. Next slide. And this is, you could actually go through these slides. Next slide, please. These are just some drawings. This is a single line calculation. This is something that we have to present to the city. This is a little bit larger of an installation, but these are the amount of work that we have to do to obtain a permit. Next slide, please. During the process, we submit the data to the city of the types of charger that we're installing. These happen to be ClipperCreek units. We we build our prints and submit them to the city with the documentation of ClipperCreek in the prints. They're actually one of the sheets of our plans. Next slide, please. And these are just some of the programs that we have for larger commercial installations. We deal heavily with out here in Southern California. There's what they call Charge Ready. These are programs that we have created that support the Charge Ready program specifically. And they're flat cost rates. So that means a customer can call up and say, how much does it cost for you to do Charge Ready installation? And we have this flat rate that we can state to them that has all of the permits and everything included in a flat rate cost. Next slide. This is my last slide. I did want to, there was one other slide that I wanted to add, and it did get added to this deck, but there is something to know about when you're installing these stations. Having the incentives available for installing the stations is very important, because there are different incentives in different areas of the country. You can go to, I believe it's desire.gov is one that will be able to get you all the local incentives for your area, as well as there are other incentives. Another one being IRS incentives, which is IRS Form 8911, which is a federal tax credit, which gets you 30% back off your federal taxes for your installation. When we do an installation, we present that form directly to the customer so that they have it, so that they can apply for their federal taxes. Another incentive out there, which will be on the Desire website, is for this local area here in Southern California, it's the AQMD EV pilot project, which gets a customer $250 off their cost of their charging equipment. And we promote this project heavily because it requires a customer to not only do the installation, use UL listed equipment, but it also requires the customer to obtain that rebate. They have to submit a copy of their permit. We believe really heavily in this. But thank you very much. I'll be sticking around for any questions. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brett. That was awesome. And speaking of incentives, in addition to the great resources you provided, anyone can also visit plugstar.com. And I'll provide that on the slide later. But on plugstar.com, you can browse the available electric vehicle models, look at the different charging stations, and you can search purchase incentives by zip code. And it does include incentives for vehicle purchase as well as charging stations. All right, so next we're going to welcome Will Barrett from ClipperCreek. Thank you so much, Will, for joining us today.
Thank you, Kylie. Yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, so I wanted to talk today just a little bit about some considerations and sort of decision points that people go through when they're picking the actual charging station for their home refilling of their plug-in vehicle. And as it's been touched on in some of the other presentations, I just wanted to sort of highlight that the most important thing, these products, a charging station, it's called the long name is EVSE for Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment. And the primary function of the device, the end result is that you get power to the vehicle, and the vehicle uses that power to refill the batteries. So that's your end result. But the primary function of the equipment is as an electrical safety appliance. So that safety certification, permitting, getting the product installed by a licensed and bonded electrician, those are all really important things. Especially considering that the appliance is designed and its primary function is to provide electrical safety for the user. It's also, designed to provide a degree of safety for the vehicle and the power grid. So it's really important to kind of, as you're going through that process of getting a plug-in vehicle and thinking about how you're going to refill it, at home or, out in public. Of course, everything that you go use out in public is going to be installed by a licensed electrician. It's going to be permitted, it's going to be inspected, and it's going to be independently safety certified. So it's really important to sort of do that little bit of research up front when you're thinking about putting one of these in your home. The certifications are done by nationally recognized testing laboratories, as Brett mentioned. Underwriters Laboratory, or UL, and Intertech, or ETL, are two of the nationally recognized testing laboratories in the US that are approved and certified to test to the standards for these appliances. And as you're going through the decision process of which brand or which appliance you're going to purchase for refilling your vehicle at home or for recharging your vehicle at home, make sure that you check for those certifications. They're usually going to be listed in the product specifications. If a product is certified, it's going to there's going to be a mark on the product itself that has the agency's sort of stamp of approval. So you can see in this slide over on the right-hand side, I've kind of, this is an example of a charging station that is certified. And this one, in this case, is actually certified by both UL and ETL. And you can sort of see this is on the product side label. This is what your electrician is going to look at, before they install the product. Any licensed electrician would generally only install a certified product that's been tested by a nationally recognized testing laboratory. So they're going to be looking at that. And then also the inspector, when they're coming to sign off on that permit, they're going to be looking for that labeling on the product as well. Ahead of actually having the product in your hands, you can do some research by, asking the supplier to provide information. With a certified product, you get a file number, and that information should be something that they can make readily available if you're interested. So I spent so much time talking about this safety certification, even though it's kind of already been mentioned, just because it is really important. There are high levels of power going through these products. The main function of the product is as an electrical safety appliance. And that third-party certification tests all of those things, that they meet the electrical safety requirements, that they have to stop making power available in certain scenarios if there's a fault in the system that this appliance is monitoring and sort of detecting for. So these laboratories, test the products to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do from an electrical safety standpoint. And they also test them for construction to make sure that they're made of the appropriate materials, where if something does go wrong, you're not going to have a catastrophic event. So it's really important that you make sure that the product that you're getting is safety certified. And unfortunately, there are a lot of products out there that are available through mostly online retailers and third-party marketplaces. But some of these third-party marketplaces have, pretty powerful brand names behind them, like Amazon, Walmart, and things like this, where the products can appear to be legitimate, but they're actually not. So this nationally recognized testing laboratory safety certification is really important. There's a link that I have at the bottom of this slide that has a little bit more information around safety certification, things to look for, that you can sort of identify a non-certified product by some of the product features that it might have, some of the plug types they may offer, and things like this. We go into a lot more detail on that in this in the article that's attached to this link, and it's also available as a flyer through Plug in America, through the National Drive Electric Week resources, really just to make sure that part of that decision-making process is to make sure that a product is independently safety certified. And you could go ahead and go to the next slide. Some other things, so these are examples of resources that exist on our website, but there are resources like this that are available in other places. So don't feel like you're obligated to come to our site, but these are sort of touching on some of the other sort of decision points that people will be looking at when they're selecting a charging station to install at their home. And this is mostly focused again on level 2, as Ken mentioned earlier on. That level 1 station or the trickle charger is going to come with the vehicle, and that plugs into a standard household outlet. These are resources that are available mostly for thinking about the level 2 station. So beyond safety certification, the next question or the next thing that people generally ask about is what power level of charging station or EVSE should I purchase? And it depends a little bit. It depends on the capacity at the home and the type of vehicle that they're going to be refilling, and also potentially future considerations. So most plug-in hybrid vehicles, for example, are going to be able to take in power at about 16 amps. Where most pure electric vehicles today are going to be able to take in power at about 32 amps or above. So when it comes to the charging station, people will make the decision on, well, do I want to purchase the one that, maybe they have a plug-in hybrid and they're thinking about, do I want to purchase the one that's going to be able to fill up this vehicle as fast as possible? Or if I have the capacity, maybe I want to get a higher power station so I have, the ability to fill up my current vehicle and a future vehicle that I might get later at a higher rate. So we've got a little tool where you can, select any make or model of vehicle. Another example, as Kylie mentioned, is like the PlugStar website is another place where you can go and sort of find this information. We have it on our website as well. There's a link included in here. But you can pick a vehicle make and model, and then you're going to get information about what power level charging station is going to be able to fill that vehicle up as fast as possible, which one might be a lower cost, lower power alternative, and then option for something that if you have the capacity, you may want to invest a little bit more in the infrastructure up front to be able to charge future vehicles faster. There's also a lot of information about the vehicle features, like how big the battery is, if it's able to do fast charging, if it has the ability to configure a timer, which most vehicles, most plug-in vehicles do have that built in. And it's a really good value add for customers because during the process you can reach out to your utility and identify if they have any special rate programs for plug-in vehicle owners. Many utilities do around the country, especially here in California, but many utilities do have special rate programs, and they'll offer a lower rate, usually late at night through the early morning hours. So the timer on the vehicle is pretty handy because you can set the vehicle up to only charge from midnight to 6 a.m. as an example. And then you get home, you plug it into your station, and it'll start charging during that low utility rate. Other information that's available through this resource is like how long it would take to charge a vehicle, how much does it cost to recharge a vehicle based on the national average, price per kilowatt hour or price per unit of electricity. Other tools or other things, as was mentioned earlier, you're going to have to find an installer. We recommend local licensed electricians. On our website, we have a resources that helps people find electricians in their area that have experience. We've verified that they're licensed. Their license is in good standing. And it also allows for user reviews and links to other other web-based reviews like Yelp and Google+. And it's a free resource that's available. And the idea is to help people be able to find an electrician in their area. With these appliances, at least speaking from our company, which, you know, again, there are other companies that make charging stations for plug-in vehicles, and you know, they have you know, their own set of resources, or they may have their own set of resources. So, you know, as you're exploring, you know, these resources exist here. They may also exist other places, but you know, the installer locator tool is intended to, you know, help people find installers, but it's not a requirement that you use an installer from that tool. At least from our standpoint, we say any licensed electrician can install our products. And lastly, you know, just sort of truncating down the things that you have to go through. The other thing that's definitely worth spending some time, as Brett mentioned, is do a little bit of research on rebates and incentives that may be available to you. The 8911 tax credit that Brett mentioned is an infrastructure tax credit for alternative fueling equipment, which these charging stations do qualify for, and it's actually set to expire at the end of this year. So if you're on the fence, or you've been thinking about you know, putting a level 2 station in your home, you know, there is a little bit of money on the table in the form of this 8911 tax credit that may not be available in the future. And that's, you know, 30% up to $1,000 off the cost of installation. So that's your electrician expense, but also the hardware expense for these charging stations could be included in that. And again, it's set to expire at the end of this year. With that tax credit, it has expired and then been reinstated in the past. So it's if you don't end up sort of pulling the trigger on the infrastructure project this year, you know, still take a look to see if that 8911 tax credit gets reinstated or brought back. And then there are local incentives from like local governmental agencies, utilities, you know, clean cities organizations. We have so there's the Plugstar website that Kylie mentioned as a good place to go and identify these rebates that might be available. There's also a link in this slide to the ClipperCreek website where we maintain this information. There's a U.S. government based website, the Alternative Fuel Data Center. You can go to the Alternative Fuel Data Center, and they have a section for laws and incentives that you can look at by state. And they cover, of course, electric transportation, infrastructure credits, but also credits that may be available, or credits or incentives that may be available for the vehicles themselves, which are also another place that there are a lot of rebate programs and things like that around the country. And with that's I think that's my last slide. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Brett. Will. Great information as always, and great resources. You know, National Drive Electric Week, just for the audience so everyone knows, National Drive Electric Week is a brand neutral campaign. We're always trying to promote all types of electric vehicles and charging stations. So, you know, thank you to all our speakers for offering such a great variety of resources. You know, we're really appreciative of that. All right, so next we're gonna go to Q&A. And while we're doing our Q&A session, here's some resources for everyone if you're interested. So if you have a question, please put it in the comment. If you're watching on Facebook Live, just add it to the comments, and then we'll get to it from there. Okay, and then actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and ask all of our presenters to come on camera. Actually, I think this works. You know, I'm going to leave the screen up for a bit. It looks like we're all going to appear on video on the side. So that way everyone can view the resources. All right. First question. So first question is, at what capacity can the main panel handle before the need to trigger a purchase of a sub panel for EV charging? And this sounds like a Brett question, or maybe Ken. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. So main panel and a sub panel. The main panel is what needs to be considered when adding any load. Sub panels are part of the main panel. So a sub panel is going to get its power from the main panel. So when we're looking at a customer's installation, customer's home, we always go to the main panel and then work our way out to sub panels from the main panel. Historically here in California, Southern California, 100 amp panels are very common. So we have to work, and most of the times that is a smaller panel than what is needed to support most charging stations. So we'll work with utility companies to do an upgrade for that panel. Commonly 200 amp panel is usually able for us to successfully install a charging station. If it's 200 amps and above, we usually are able to, that's usually large enough capacity to fit. But when we start getting down into the 100 amps and below that, especially with apartments and condominiums, having smaller main panels, it becomes even more difficult. So I hope that answers your question.
Awesome, thank you. All right, let's see our next question. Okay. Also one more question here. Okay. So do home insurance companies require that licensed electricians work on any new wiring in a house?
Brett, you want to cover that as well? A permit is required when you pull a new circuit, but Brett, why don't you take that from the insurance standpoint?
Fortunately, we've never let it get to that point where it's an insurance problem, because per the national code, we have to have permits. So for us, as a contractor, I can't do an installation without a permit. So we're going to be we're going to be supporting the insurance company by having that permit with any installation we do. And the permits are on file and permanently with the homeowner's home and record of title. So having the permit is also an added value to the homeowner, because it's a permanent record with their home. Hope that answered that.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, let's see if we have another question. And apologies if anyone on screen sees me leaning over to the side. I'm checking the Facebook comments on my phone. So one comment is just a great reminder. We have lots of other National Drive Electric Week events coming up. You can visit driveelectricweek.org to find other online and in-person events. You know, we have lots of online events covering multiple topics. One example is Guy Hall will be covering his first EV trip from the lower 48 to Alaska. So we went from the Mexico border through the Canadian Yukon to Fairbanks, Alaska. So if you didn't think EVs could travel that far, he will show you otherwise. Okay, and a follow-up question from our last one. So the last question was, do home insurance companies require that licensed electricians work on any new wiring in a house? And the follow-up question is, at what point do you need to buy a sub panel? When the 100 amp panel is at 80% capacity, question mark?
That's a great question. I can take that one. Once you get to that 80% capacity, it's not a sub panel upgrade. It's actually a main panel upgrade. So from the main panel, yes, you want to make sure that you have at least 125% protection on your EV circuit. So if you don't have that protection at your main panel, you need to upgrade up to a larger panel. Same way goes with the sub panel. Sub panel will have to have that protection as well. So if you don't have it at the sub panel, that 125% protection of your load, then you'll have to upgrade your sub panel, and then the sub panel is fed from your main panel. So you may have to upgrade 2 panels if you're feeding it from a sub panel. Hope that answered that.
Hey, Brett, do you want to elaborate a little bit more when you need a sub panel? Because a sub panel really is a subset of the overall main capacity, but sometimes it's really just for physical space, getting more breakers in that area. You might want to elaborate a little bit so people know the difference.
Yeah, thank you. So sub panel is a trick that we'll do if we don't have enough physical space inside a customer's main panel. We may have to add what they call a sub panel, but that sub panel can only be added if the main panel has enough capacity to support not only the existing loads, but also the sub panel that you're adding. So there's calculations that are involved in that to make sure you're protected both at the sub panel and the main panel.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, next question. Are there standalone solar charging systems, or are they usually part of the house wiring? And it's okay to say you don't know if no one knows the answer to this question.
I can take a stab at it. In most cases, when you have a solar array at a home and you're installing charging, it's usually a grid-tied system. So the charging station or the EVSE is taking power from the grid, and then power generated through solar is sort of offsetting that. There are cases at homes where, and there are products that exist commercially that are, purely solar and battery based, where you have the solar power coming in. Usually that solar power is going to be stored in batteries, and then that battery power will be utilized for the charging, because charging requires a large amount of instantaneous and ongoing power. So as you're charging a vehicle, it's you're generally going to be using the amount of power that vehicle or system is capable of delivering at full capacity for a number of hours. So it's usually going to be a grid-tied system, but they're mostly more commercially. There are products that exist that will charge vehicles purely with the solar power, but usually they're backed up by batteries.
All right, great. Thanks, Will. Okay. So I don't see any other questions just yet, but we have a few minutes, so I'll wait a moment in case anyone's typing.
I can add a little bit on the solar. We have seen some inventive new products coming out there that will feed charging stations from the customer's inverter. I believe there's a company called Solar Edge that has something newer that we've been seeing customers look at. So it's exciting to see new products on the market.
Great. And as we're waiting for any other questions, You can visit driveelectricweek.org if you want to find any other electric vehicle events. Some other topics being covered include EV battery recycling and reuse. Also, I believe the National Solar Tour happens to coincide with Drive Electric Week. So there's a lot of events on pairing solar with electric vehicle charging. Oh, another question. For dual car charging planning, let's see. So I think the question is, how would you plan or install for 2 cars? For dual, would you have dual EVSEs or shared versus multiple circuits?
This is a good question for Will.
Yeah, so there are a few ways of doing it. Having 2 EVSEs is certainly one way. So each one would be wired up to its own circuit. And as you're doing something like that, good things to consider are what type of capacity you'll need for that vehicle each night. Because in most cases, if you have 2 EVs and 2 EVSEs or 2 charging stations, you're going to plug both vehicles in every night. So you don't necessarily need to think about what it's going to take or how quickly you can fill it up from empty to full, but just what are you going to need to each one of those vehicles to recoup your typical day's drive. So you may not need to go with something that's, two stations that are each on a 40 amp circuit, because that's a whole lot of capacity in a home panel. There are also products for charging stations that exist that you can have one box that wires up to one circuit, and they'll split the power between the 2 vehicles. So you just run one circuit to one of these appliances, and then you'll have 2 hoses coming out of it, and you plug one into each vehicle. There are also EVSEs or charging stations where you can have 2 units that are connected together with a communication interface, and that'll allow 2 stations to dynamically share the power from one circuit. So you can have 2 separate boxes ultimately connected back to one circuit, essentially with a load management system integrated in that's allowing them to share the capacity of that one circuit. So there's a number of ways that you can do it. And circuit sharing or considering a lower power level 2 EVSE that's going to get you what you need overnight, and also there are many examples of 2 EV households where one vehicle can actually get by with the level 1 cord set that came with the vehicle. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. Is maybe one vehicle can be fine with level 1, and then you use the level 2 for the second vehicle, and maybe the first from time to time if it needs it. So a lot of ways that you can go about doing it, definitely.
And if you're thinking about a single high-speed charger for both vehicles, consider the placement of the station. So maybe in the center of the garage so it can reach both vehicles. We've actually had some customers be concerned because people have their, say it's a 2-car garage, and each member of the spouses have their own side that they park on, and they decided to switch. It was a pretty big deal for them to take the left side of the garage instead of the right side of the garage and things like that. So consider that as you're thinking about dual EVs in the future.
All right, and we just have one more question. We'll make it our last question of the day. So are there any noise considerations with an EV install? Is there a hum once the panel is installed?
No, should be not at all. Brett, any details on that? We haven't seen anything like that.
No, we've never noticed a noise or had a complaint from a customer. But if there is a noise, that could be an indication of a problem.
There is when the EVSE or the charging station activates, you may hear a click. There's a relay that closes to make power available to the vehicle. How loud that click is varies by products, but there is an audible noise when it turns on, essentially.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. That's all for today. So this video will be available on our Facebook page if you want to rewatch it. You can also contact Plug-in America's EV support program if you have any other questions, or any one of the presenters that was on today. Yeah. And if you would like to get in contact with any presenter and their contact information was not in the presentation, you can email info@pluginamerica.org. I had to catch myself from giving out my personal email. Maybe not a good idea to fill up my inbox. Yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Lots of great information, and be sure to RSVP for another event on driveelectricweek.org.